So time goes on, and my family hires a private investigator to look into John because my other siblings are now seeing that he is not such a great guy. And so they want to know some answers. We go and we find out. So I get a call one day, and it's my sister telling me that they got all the information back from the private investigator. And my sister was telling me that he has different social security card numbers, that he has a storage in Cathedral City, California, and inside that was a refrigerator with a backpack, some zip ties, a children's book, and I believe some duct tape was in there as well. And there was also some stuff for chloroform in the fridge as well, so it was basically a kidnap kit. So that is super suspicious. My sister is also trying to reach out to his ex-wives, to old detectives that have had his case, anyone and everyone we can get help. Everyone that we can get to help us. Unfortunately, there was no one that was really able to help us. Only Detective Lucan told my sister that this guy isn't good and to stay away. So that was really the only information that we had on him from detectives and other people. So that was really suspicious information that we had, other than Detective Lucan told my sister to stay away from this guy. This guy is bad news. That's all we had. So we found out all this information, and we find out that he has restraining orders on him from other women. His sister had a restraining order on him. And so this guy was also fresh out of jail 2 days before he met my mom. So this guy was just bad news, a con artist, grifter, anything and everything you want to call someone bad. And we were scared. We were very scared for our lives. We sit on this information for a little bit, and then my brother-in-law, my sister, and then my other sister, my brother-in-law and my two sisters tell my mom what they found. They showed my mom everything. My mom ended up having to plan a little bit of her leave. She ended up finding a renter for the Balboa place. She confronted John, and she also had a suspicion of this because she found a letter from an inmate, and she was opening it in the mail, and John snatched it out of her hands and told her basically that that's a federal law, that she can't open mail, and how dare she. So she already had a suspicion that, maybe he has been in jail before. We confirmed everything for her, and then I get a call saying that my mom is leaving John, and that she's going to plan, and that she's finally getting out. So I was so excited. My mom moved out of the Balboa place, and my dad helped her find a renter for the place to take over the lease. And then she was quote unquote safe, and then she started staying at one of my sisters in Ladera, and she felt very safe there, but she was also staying in my nephew's bedroom, and that was not the best time for her. And John slowly started to creep his way back into her. He was able to take her to different lawyers that told her that these were different John Meehans. And this is so crazy because he had different lawyers in his pocket in a sense. And if they didn't do what he wanted, he would literally get them disbarred. He was so successful at doing that because he knew the law so well. I wish he would have put it towards good, but unfortunately he was just a bad man. So my mom and John end up getting back together a couple months later, and my mom gets a place at the Irvine Spectrum Apartments for him and her to rent and start a new life. They are trying to rebuild, so they get a dog together, this English cream golden, beautiful dog. And then eventually my mom gets a house in Vegas for them, because she's also starting to do business out in Vegas, and she wanted to create this silk plant business that John was doing a lot of research on. So my mom is thinking she's living this fairy tale life. She's thinking that everything's going to get better. The only thing is, he's not getting along with her kids, and we're not getting along with him. At this point, everybody in my family dislikes John. So my mom is hoping that we're just going to see him as a good person and get along, and that everything's going to be great. At this point in June 2015, me and my boyfriend broke up. At this point, she's coming out to Vegas every so often with John, and during my breakup, my mom was getting text message after text message after text message, basically keeping tabs on her and telling her that she only had a certain amount of time with me, and then she needed to get back to him. And this is what I would see over and over when I would get together with my mom, was him text her and just like him keeping in contact with her, asking her how she's doing, and also giving her rules at this point. So many rules. And she was never allowed to see me at night. We were never able to do dinners. We could only do lunches. That was his rule, because she always had to be home for him for dinner. And that is not a red flag at all. So at this point, my mom ends up getting the house in Vegas, and I'm back in California, which I think is funny, because I'm like, why are you getting a house in Vegas when I just moved out of Vegas? And I'm just trying to live my best single girl life, in a sense, because I'm fresh out of a breakup. It was a 5-year relationship. It was a lot to deal with. So I was trying to rebuild. I didn't even know who I was, in a sense. And I get a job, I rebuild, and I'm doing the best I can. So come around to, say, March 2015. So come around to March 2016, my mom ends up leaving John again. And at this point, she's figuring out who exactly he is. My mom and my sister and I had lunch with my mom one day. My mom was showing us all the stuff that she found out on him, because she ended up hiring a private investigator herself to look into him. And then she was finding out all this information. One thing that she showed us was, when he was in jail, he cut open his stomach and stuffed it with feces so that he could get a fix. That was major to me, and I knew that if he was able to do that to himself, that he could hurt someone, no problem. So that was very scary. And then my mom ended up trying to plan her leave, but one day she left abruptly because she just had it. She ended up leaving with one shoe. It was kind of just comical that she left with one shoe. We make a joke about that here and there. And then a bag full of clothes and a few other things. My mom heads out to Vegas with my sister, and they clear out the Vegas place of my mom's stuff. My sister films it all, so that everything is on camera, and there's evidence that they're not screwing over John, and they're just taking my mom's stuff. So John ends up calling the police and says that my mom hit him. So the police call my mom, and she tells them that she couldn't have hit him because she was in Vegas, about 260 something miles away, I believe Vegas is. So how could she do that if she wasn't near him? And they checked into it, and they confirmed it, and then they said, okay, so they dismissed that report. At this point, my mom's lease comes to an end at the Irvine Spectrum, and my mom moves in with my sister. And my sister's living in an apartment in Irvine, California that's heavily security and all that good stuff. My sister's living in an apartment off of Jamboree with high security. So it's very safe for my mom and very safe for my sister. John one day ends up running his car into a gated community, into the gates, and then he leaves his car there. At this time, we thought we were being stalked by him, but we had no clue we had no evidence for that to confirm that. So we couldn't really say that we were being stalked by John, but we just always had this feeling. And inside his car was so many junk. Inside his car was so much junk food, so much wrappers of just like snacks and everything. So he was doing something in the car, and the police said that it looked like he lived in there, which is very suspicious. My mom ends up getting that car because the car is in her name. She gets it back to California. Then John ends up letting the dog out, or we think he's letting the dog out, but I think he's going to California, stalking us and just letting the door open, and the dog's escaping from the yard. So the dog was escaping and getting into the pound. And my mom gave John a few days to go pick up the dog because that was his dog, but he ended up not picking up the dog. So my mom went out there, grabbed Murphy, and then Murphy, the dog, would stay with me because I worked at a dog kennel. During this time, John also lit my mom's car on fire. He stole it from her work, and then he took it to a few blocks over. He lit the car on fire, but he did not do a good job. It lit partially on fire, but the rest of the car was basically good, but you couldn't really drive it because, some of it was lit on fire and was burned. So the police had that case, and they were doing an investigation on that. That case, the person who had that case was actually my high school police officer. The police officers that hang out at your high school. So that was the guy that had the case. And then I also went to church with him in high school, so he knew me pretty well. I found out from my mom that he went on a few vacations during the time and that he didn't take this case very seriously in a sense because domestic violence cases are very rarely taken seriously. During this time, John is threatening my mom, threatening me, but I can't see those messages. During this time, John is threatening my mom. He's threatening my sister. I have no idea, but he actually sent me messages about something, but I found those messages right after my attack. He also said to my sister one time that he would shoot her with a sniper rifle, and this was when he was together with my mom in the Balboa place. So just going back a little bit, because I think it's important to add that in here. So John was just a terrible person.